Good afternoon. And good afternoon to everyone who is joining us on the internet as well. Welcome. I just want to put a bug in your ear before we start to go into your questions. In the United States, you have just celebrated Independence Day. And the celebration is of having gained independence. But what I'm wondering is, how many of you took the 4th of July as an opportunity to grant someone independence? The attention is always on getting independence. And yet, each one of you has concepts about loved ones, friends, family, enemies, and you hold them to your concept of them. In effect, you hold them hostage. And even if they are willing to change, even if they are changing, even if they have changed and are no longer behaving according to the concepts you're holding of them, you insist on continuing to see them the way you always saw them. And in effect, make it extremely difficult for them to be with you, reflecting the changes that they have made in themselves. And so you keep them in bondage to whatever your current perception of them is. So not one of you who is hearing my voice at the moment, not one of you lacks the opportunity to grant someone else independence from the concept you are holding about them. The United States gained independence from England. England had to grant independence to the United States. Each of you must grant independence to your fellow man. And you should have, if you are a citizen of the United States, you should have a real feeling for the significance of having independence. And therefore, it should make sense to you that it is important for those in your lives to have independence from whatever limited perception you would be holding them to. And there should be a glad willingness to grant them independence. Now, there's another aspect in a larger sense that needs to be looked at. And that is that the human condition, the miasma of the human experience, the suffering, the terrorism, the sickness, the death, all of the turmoil of human existence exists for you because you have claimed independence from your source. You have claimed independence from God. You have all, at some point, said, God, I'd rather see it my way. I would rather abandon your perspective of creation and see it in a smaller, tinier, less generous manner. I would like to define everything that you have already defined as creation with the bias that I want to give it. I want to like orchids better than dandelions. I want to like willow trees better than pine trees. I'll still like pine trees, but I want to have favorites. I want to like so-and-so better than so-and-so. I want to have special friends, and then I want to have acquaintances, and then I'll let the rest be strangers. You see? And in your choice not to see with God's vision, which it is your birthright to be experiencing everything with, you have created, like I said, a tinier, more limited, less generous viewpoint. And your viewpoint has caused creation to appear to be unlike God's expression. And in the absence of the larger view, you found yourself feeling tiny instead of infinite. And in your tininess, you began to feel vulnerable. And in your vulnerability, you began to feel the need for defense. And you brought into play opposition. And ultimately, what you are defending yourself against is the presence of God, the parts of the presence of God that you decided you didn't want to be your most favorite parts. So as I said, I just wanted to put a bug in your ear. You need to give your attention to releasing others from the concepts you are holding them to and truly grant them independence. And you also need to know that the Father is more than willing. In fact, the very presence of the Father is a standing invitation to you to abandon your independence from Him, so that you might make room for His perspective in your mind, which is the only thing that is supposed to be there in your mind. And in so doing, regain the infinite view that it's your birthright to be experiencing, where nothing is any longer being excluded in any way, shape, or form, and so that you can feel your oneness with it. Now, the steps to coming back home into your right mind begin with granting your brother independence from the concepts you are holding him or her to. It starts with you looking at your brother and beginning to witness for your brother on his behalf, in his favor. And in order to do that, you've got to abandon whatever your current concept of them is. Because until you can remember how to love your brother, you're not going to be able to remember how to experience God as the very presence of you. There has to be an act of love that you express to your brother and sister. And in that act of extension, as I said, you make room for the Father's perspective to enter you. And that blesses you, and that blesses your brother. So think about this word independence a little more clearly than you may have before. The interesting thing is that when you claim independence from God, you automatically, at some point, have to make other things dependent on you. They become your dependence. I'm not going to elaborate on that. I just want that to sit in your mind, to percolate. And so part of the undoing of your claiming independence from God is to grant those you have made dependent their freedom. And you grant them their freedom by beginning to open up to what is the truth, the real truth about them, acknowledging it, honoring it. Appreciating those who have changed and grown, that you hadn't let off the hook, as well as appreciating those who still have growing to do, and by acknowledging what they would see as their potential, but you recognize to be the truth about them, you give them support for change rather than promoting further defense on their part. Okay. Who has a question? Would you pass this to her?
Thank you. The last two or 3 years, I've had a son with drug problems that are, it's better. It's off and on. A father who is, who's had an illness, but my mother and I have felt that we needed to keep him in his home and driving lots and lots of miles to keep him there. And now my husband is ill for the first time in his life. And I was planning to ask you, what's in my thinking that's drawing all this to me? And I think you just answered it with the independence. I suspect I haven't been able to give any independence to these people in my life.
Well, you know what? First of all, you can't make anyone sick. If anything, these people are in your experience and you're in theirs because you have a capacity to give. And they need the gift. And you need to discover the depth of your capacity to love without giving up on them. You have the opportunity here, if you won't fuss about it, of discovering the bottomlessness of your capacity to be there for them on their behalf without depleting yourself. But if you think, oh, I've only got a certain amount of love to give, I only have a certain amount of stamina, I only have a certain amount of follow through, then you will begin to see the call for love as a demand, and you will begin to resist the demand, and you will begin to see it as unfair. And you, by bringing resistance into play, will tire yourself out.
I think I've done that, not so much I am getting tired of helping them, but I feel that I have to earn a living. And I'm not able to pursue that very much because I'm going in so many different directions for these people. But I think it's somewhat the same thing as what you're saying.
Yes, it's important for you not to let frustration and inner fussing to engross you. Don't abandon your willingness to extend your love. But at the same time, you're not meant to go into a self-sacrifice mode. That's unintelligent. And you will get upset sooner or later if you insist upon engaging in self-sacrifice. And that won't be an emotional anger. That will be the very righteousness of you, the very integrity of you saying to you, stop treating yourself disrespectfully. You must take care of yourself. I know I repeat this often, but early on I told Paul, you may be here to serve, but you're not to be the main dish. And if you are a giver, the tendency will be to give beyond reason, beyond what works for you. What I mean by that is that you will neglect yourself in favor of someone else. And Paul has had to learn not to do that because that's not love. Because if you sacrifice yourself, there's no longer anyone there where you were to be loved. So, if you need to work, then stand firmly with that awareness and take whatever steps need to be taken to secure work, and realize that no one else can end up suffering for your being consistent with and in harmony with the integrity of you. Sometimes givers begin to think that they are the only ones, in other words, that they are the specific savior for another, and you never are. The source of another's good is never exclusively you. In fact, the source is never you. The source is always their father, mother. And you may be the manifestation, but you're not the only one. And so when you have to take steps to take care of yourself, acknowledge within yourself that God is their source and God loves them, and entrust them to God. And know that God will find a way, and that it doesn't all rest on your shoulders to find the way. Then you won't get frustrated, and as a result of not being frustrated, the flow of your love extended to those who need you will be freely given. There won't be any barbs attached to it. You see? And because there aren't any barbs or frustrations attached to it, you will not enervate yourself. You will not use up your energy carelessly. And it will be there for you on your behalf and on behalf of those you care about.
just one other thing. With my husband, he and I use spiritual healing through God, and that's what we've chosen to do. And it's sometimes rougher than we had expected. And I'm wondering what your thought is on that.
The first thing I want to make perfectly clear is that it is your right to choose how you want to cope with or deal with this situation. You have an absolute right to choose to do it the way you're doing it. In a way, one of the reasons it's more difficult is because there is unlearning that has to occur. And when you go to a physician, no unlearning is required. And therefore, what has still not been learned will represent itself.
Exactly. Thank you.
You are welcome. But don't assume that all of the unlearning has to be rugged. The only unlearning or learning that is rugged is the learning or unlearning that's resisted. Okay.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Hands? Yes.
Well, this is kind of like stage 2 or chapter 2 of my work saga problem. I very much appreciated your answer last time about not allowing people to walk over me and to stand up for myself. So I've been doing that. And now I'm not sure what my next step is with anything, if I'm going to stay in this job or if something else is going to become obvious to me elsewhere.
Well, first of all, I want to convey that you have learned to, you have allowed yourself to expand to the point where you are registering your well, let's put it this way, registering the fact that you notice something inappropriate is going on. Now, the next step is to say no to what is going on that is inappropriate. Don't just let them know that what they've done hasn't escaped your attention. Let them know that it hasn't escaped your attention and the way it's being done, you do not accept. In effect, it is learning to say no and express a demand.
Would that be getting the union involved and
Getting?
the union, my union involved?
No.
No, it's me.
For example, you should have told them you wanted that office, that it was unacceptable for it to have gone to a brand new employee when it had been designated yours.
I did plan this when they asked me. They've offered me 3 really crappy ones. Really crappy. And in the hallways, on the way to the lunchroom is one, no windows. And when I go back and they demand that I answer that, I'm going to say, I already picked my cubicle, and that's the one I want.
Indeed.
And not answer their question.
Indeed.
And they're also asking me what my decision is about whether I'm going to stay on my job or not, which, if I haven't turned in a resignation, this is really, really new for me to say no.
Indeed.
I don't, that's very new territory, and I'm very happy to do it. Nervous.
But
I need help.
let me tell you that you have just as much right as anyone else to say no. Saying no is not a big deal. It's like a fundamental right. You either can agree or disagree. And to have the right to disagree taken away is a ridiculous idea. And you shouldn't play into it, and you also shouldn't think it's such a big deal. They won't think it's a big deal to say, no, you can't have that office. And you'll sit there and say, it's not a big deal that they said, no, I couldn't have that office. But I can't say, no, your decision is not acceptable. You see, that's what you say. It's okay for them to say no, but it's not okay for you to say no. Start saying no. Don't think it's a big deal. And when you start saying no and you don't think it's a big deal, they'll hear that your no means something. They'll hear that you're meaning no. They'll hear that they can't deal that way with you. And I'm going to be extreme here. If you say no, and they say, well, see you later then, say goodbye to them with gratitude that they've shown their colors for what they truly are. Do not for a moment renege on your no. Do not walk away and say, well, if I hadn't said no, I'd still have my job there. Even though what you would be saying is that you would still have a job there with people who you shouldn't be dealing with at all. And walk on to your next job, carrying with you your newfound right to say no and let the chips fall where they may. Other people are saying no and letting the chips fall where they may. And they do that until someone else says no to them. And they find out that they're dealing with an equal. Just an equal as a human being that has a fundamental right to say no. Because if you can't say yes and no, you can't work together with anyone. You can work for someone. You can't work together with them. So get over this idea that saying no is some humongous, fantastic, big deal. It's about as fundamental as putting your weight on your right foot and then putting your weight on your left foot and putting your weight on your right foot. If you didn't have both feet, you couldn't walk smoothly. If you can't say yes, no, you can't communicate well. You can't work together. You have no freedom.
Of course, my next fear then is, is there another job for me? That's the scary part. Saying no
Well,
isn't
I'm going to put
scary.
it this way. There are more jobs for principled people than there are for unprincipled people.
So I should just stick with my integrity and
Yes, and if
then see what happens. It might even be a surprise, and they might.
Oh, if you stand with your integrity, everything that will follow will be a surprise. for you until you get
Yeah.
used to it.